Hello, 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 everyone. Here we are again. So glad to see you. I'm Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond.
And I'm Dail Chambers.
Yes, and we are artists, organizers, mothers, women, natives of the U.S. and the South. And we are here today to share with you the second in a series that we've been working on for the St. Louis Public Library. This is the Kirkwood Public Library. Yes, sorry. We live in the St. Louis metropolitan, so all of those fantastic communities around kind of get pulled into St. Louis, but we're at the Kirkwood Public Library. So the last time we were together, we were talking about migration, art practice, and the act of generating art. In fact, I was in Tanzania in East Africa. Dail was here stateside. We were both together, obviously, today, back together in the US. And we were able to talk about why some of our families moved from place to place, what we might take with us as far as a creative spark from our home to our new homes. And it was really, really incredible. This time, we're talking about collaboration. So last time it was migration. This time it is collaboration and all the ways that that takes meaning when you're making art. And for our patron saints of collaboration, I am wearing a t-shirt made from a drawing done by Dail Chambers of the activist Fannie Lou Hamer and her comrade, Ella Baker. Both of these women were incredible organizers and thinkers. You should look them up, Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker.
Well, let's start with talking about YEYO Arts Collective. YEYO Arts Collective is dedicated to the creative empowerment of women and families. We've been operating in St. Louis for over 11 years now. It's been an amazing journey. And that is one way that we've been collaborating. Our group of people, our group of artists, two of us are some of the folks involved, yes, has partnered and collaborated with St. Louis Public, now I'm saying it, Kirkwood Public Library,
yes,
in determining how it is that we can engage with the community. And it's been fabulous. In the beginning, one of the things that we came up with was having a social justice drawing contest, and two of us led the youth into thinking about whatever social justice issues kind of lead their life. Then we did a mixed media. You all know I love mixed media. We've done mixed media workshops, and now we're here. Like you said, the last time you were in Tanzania, and I was making art for my mobile healing arts camper, where I had a mobile exhibition in the middle of a street fest. And I showed folks that migration is for everyone. Who in the world hasn't migrated? No matter where you're at and where you're from, you've moved somewhere, or maybe someone in your family's moved somewhere. And that doesn't happen well without collaboration. So let's start with Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer. Or do you want to start with us?
Let's start with us.
We collaborate in so many ways. We intend things through writing together. We determine what our goals are and we write them down. I think that's been the most successful part of our collaboration.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, we play to each other's strengths. So collaboration is two kids working together to build a Lego model, right? Not fighting over the pieces and trying to figure out who's gonna best each other or shine the most in the collaboration. Throughout a collaboration, Dail and I play to our strengths. And my strengths are writing, teaching, and performing. And Dail, what would you say? Some of her strengths are the same, but would you mention some others as well?
I feel as though your strengths are inspiration for my strengths as a fellow creative. Okay. So my strengths are, of course, organizing. I feel like I'm a great visionary, and that I'm good at seeing a broader future, and I draw it out. So Drawing is one of my strengths, and gardening is one of my strengths.
Yes, definitely.
And so I feel as though for the areas in which that are not my strengths, I can draw in inspiration and sometimes include them into my art pieces, especially when I'm making mixed media pieces.
Mhm.
So then there might be a collage, and we'll get more into that later, but
Mhm.
there might be a collage with text. And the written text might have been inspired by a creative writing thing or a journey that I could have been on or something of the sort,
Mhm.
or a topic in history and social justice,
Mhm.
like our patrons, Ella Baker. I love Ella Baker.
Yes, yes, and I love Fannie Lou Hamer. And we actually collaborate on an artist retreat space. We co-host a retreat space called Fannie Lou Hamer House, and it is about to open very soon for applications for artists to do residencies there, to get some healthful, restful space away from the rush and bustle of life and create whatever it is they create, their sculpture, their mixed media art, their novel, their poems, their fabrics, whatever it is. So stay tuned for that. And you can go to femininepronoun.com, or you can go to our Instagram page, which is called Fannie Lou Hamer House.
And I want to say one thing about that. A lot of times as we get older, we find more and more reasons to not keep up with our creative practice, especially especially as we are managing maybe school or larger future goals, especially family life. We have to carve out time for our creative spirit and to be inspired and to practice at the things that we're not good at. And I think that is something that's a foundational aspect to good collaborations and entering community.
Mhm.
Collaboration is one of the first ways that we enter community. I want to show you a few books. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, wait, maybe we should do a pause about the art first and then go into the books.
Yes.
Okay. So we were talking about writers, and I had one piece by an artist in New Orleans named Soraya. She does mixed media art here. Like I said, she's from New Orleans, and her piece is about Audre Lorde.
Dale, what makes it mixed media? What
When
does
you
that mean?
use multiple forms of materials to create a larger piece.
Mhm.
Maybe some of it is painting, maybe some of it is uh, pieces, words here, collage material, magazines,
Mhm.
and you piece it together to create an image that is authentic for you.
Mhm.
So this is one example.
Okay, fantastic.
And
And I can see some of those pieces you mentioned, right?
yes,
So I can see some words, some pieces that it looks like are from magazines, some painting, and so on.
mhm.
Hmm.
And so think about composition when you're making something like this. I believe that the artist was successful in their composition and they were creative in their composition as well. Let's see. Then we have one piece that I've made this mixed media. This is a magazine. This is a magazine clipping where I have then painted on top, and I found a butterfly from nature and I included it in this box. Mhm.
Wow, let me look at that. It's so 3D. I hope that's coming across on screen how 3D it is. I love mixed media art.
Me too. And so there's a few artists that are always doing mixed media too. I want to start with nature project,
Mhm.
People's Park in Berkeley, California. Have you heard of it before?
I have.
Yes, it's not that far from UC Berkeley for folks who are thinking about college. And this book shows how the community came together, collaborated, and made a park in the middle of an urban environment, a lot like what I do.
Mm-hmm.
hmm So, just like in St. Louis and other urban spaces, we have living conditions that might be subpar or might need to be remodeled or rethought, redesigned. So this was also happening in California. You'll find that a lot of the issues in one city might be the same in other cities.
Mhm.
So then we have a big unrest, a social movement that happened. Social movements are when a large group of people are on the same accord and decide to move towards justice together in a public way. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I love the way she brought in that there was, did you call it a social unrest or social movement? Social movement. Yeah, so often social movements provoke art and art provokes social movements. And really without the artists, and that includes the poets, the visual artists and the performing artists, without them, we wouldn't have social movements because they create works that make us question our surroundings.
Yes.
Mhm.
So here you have a lot of things that I've been inspired by, to be honest with you. We have where they have a clothing box for people who do not have clothes. They've created healing circles and a mobile free box for people in the area, and they would bike the free box around. Many of us know about the free little libraries. These are things that we can do for our community and passively collaborate with those around us by offering things for other people that they might need, like resources, books, clothes. A little lemonade stand can easily turn into a mobile art exhibition as well. And those are ways to engage in community through collaboration. Find a friend. So I just wanted to show you all, give you all an idea of what it looks like to have a social movement, to collaborate with others, and change the social landscape around you. Many folks that'll be watching this are from the St. Louis area, so we've seen things like this before. You want to talk about that?
Yes, there's another book on the table that mentions Ferguson, Missouri, which is a community that we're all familiar with here in the St. Louis metropolitan. We are a collection of communities to make up the entire metropolitan area. And this book is called Ferguson is America, Roots of Rebellion by Jamala Rogers. And if you recall, there was a time in about 2014 where a young man named Michael Brown Jr. was shot and killed by a police officer. And it made everyone in the community, the surrounding community, the nation, and even the world rethink how we can do policing better, how we can treat Black boys with more love and more openness and more kindness, and how we can create communities where something like this couldn't happen. So lots of artists throughout the world created works in response to this. And Dail was one of those people who created works in response to this, and so did I as well. And those collaborations grew and grew and grew until that Ferguson community was able to see some significant changes for the better in its lived experience. So we're still seeing, I'm sure you're very aware, that we're still seeing the evolution of the way we treat Black youth in the US and the way we think about and conceptualize policing, incarceration. And as we envision a post-incarceration, post-policing community, the artists are really at the forefront of collaborating on painting, drawing, speaking, singing, writing what that could look like.
So that'll lead me in before I show you all more of my work and kind of give some prompts about creating your own work. I want to lead into a couple other books. Now, to back up everything that Treasure just said, emergent strategy. If you're a young person, a young adult, and you want to really come at organizing and community engagement in an authentic way, I think this is a good book. It's from Adrienne Marie Brown. And they're very popular right now on social media and other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Back to the art. Art, like you said, folks have been starting the movement, jumping in the wave, keeping the wave going through creative expression since the beginning of civilization. I picked a few artists besides myself that I wanted to show you all. And I'll start with an old school person. Oh, sorry, y'all. There's books under our. There we go. Judy Chicago. A lot of folks may not know Judy Chicago, and a lot of female and woman artists and mother artists would know about Judy Chicago because she's made books about women, the divine woman, what it is to start a civilization. One of her well-known works is in New York City still to this day, and I believe at the Brooklyn Museum. It's The Dinner Table. In The Dinner Table, she created ceramic settings for great American great women of all backgrounds as a honoring to them. And so before we can do a lot of social justice work, we really have to know in our collaborations and in our own minds who's already been doing this work before us, what can we learn from their work, and how it is we want to do it differently. How can we do it in a more authentic way to what's going on in our times, whether it be a drawing. A lot of times in my collages, I'm taking images from popular magazines and adding that context into my work, and I'll show that momentarily, or in painting, or even in subject matter. So in these pieces, she quilted. Some folks might not think of art and think of quilting or mixed media, but quilting is art, and doing different forms of creative process is mixed media. In this book, it's about the birth project, and so all of her artwork represents something about birthing. But as you see, she's using multiple forms of materials. So I want to show that to you all. And I want to show you someone who does sculpture. Sometimes Eva Hess's sculptures are mixed media, and she's using tools. Eva Hess is one of my favorite artists because you can make art out of any and everything. And you might want to comment. On the last session, we talked about the products that we buy and consume. Can you give us a quick brief about that?
Yeah, so the last session, I was in Tanzania, and I was talking about how art is very connected to, goods and services, right? We think about logos and how catchy they are and how memorable they are. Well, there was a designer, there was an artist that created the Nike swoosh or the Kellogg's font style, right? And I even talked about the meanings and the cultural connections to our goods and services. In Tanzania, the language that is most spoken is Kiswahili. So on the packaging, there were some Kiswahili words and some English words, right? And I think that as we talk about collaboration, we have to acknowledge that the marketplace, the things that we wear and consume, are also being affected, changed, and promoted by artists. So oftentimes we have to ask ourselves, are we in an unwilling collaboration with something? For instance, we think about how, and we talked about this in the last one, how we might be being unkind to the earth and the water and the air in our consumption ways. Well, there are artists who work on campaigns that can be unkind in our consumption ways. So as an artist, we have to be making sure that we're balancing making a living with our integrity and with being kind to the earth, the air, and the water.
Yes. Because we're collaborating with nature all the time.
Yes.
Really quick, I do want to say that I wore some earrings today that were repurposed.
Yay.
Just in thinking about what it is we have been talking about this season. I wanted David A. and Jackson is a local artist, and he has taken these bottle cap earrings and turned them into earrings. So in many ways, this is a consumer product, but it's also mixed media. You know, all he did was add a bead, but all it takes is one or two different materials turning into something new for it to be mixed media. And why not turn it into a product, right?
And that's a good way to kind of modify our consumption ways, because if we can take things that are already in the earth and not take from the earth more to create more art, then we are creating upcycling, repurposing ways to make something sustainable. Sustainable means that it can keep going. And a lot of our consumption ways are not sustainable. They can't keep going. But if we use items that are already in the world, it is sustainable. We can keep that going.
Real quick, this is a really old book that I've had. It's called Green Pages and talks about everything that Treasure just said. I love it because it gives you new ideas of how to do environmentally safe products and then what to do with the leftovers of that.
Okay.
And Eva Hess, back to repurposed art. Eva Hess is a sculptor. She is a minimalist artist. This is what her work looks like. I'm showing you all books today instead of a PowerPoint because it's important to still feel and experience the texture of paper. And we're at the library, and
right.
It's inspiring to feel the material that's printed on. Someone has designed the book, and that's an art form as well. And this is Eva Hess. Eva has comments on a lot of the things that we talked about today. And her work is usually created to comment on everything that was going around her at that time in both a feminist way, some people say, but also in a simplistic, minimal way. And so it's important for me to show you all this because maybe there's something in your backyard. Maybe there's something that you see at the park that you can pick up and recreate it, redefine it, turn it into something that you've never thought it would be, like these sculptures here. Very beautiful. And then some people think that art is all about drawing a person that looks like the face of that person. And that's a part of the art too. That's why we shared this shirt today. But that isn't the only way to express yourself. There's performative art. There is live art making where you could be doing the collages in front of the audience, maybe a group, maybe your family, maybe your friends. And maybe a part of the art is how it is that you engage with others with your idea. So the ideas of collaboration in art is limited. In terms of thinking about how to do that in a socially just way, I have a few suggestions. I think the first thing you have to do is say, hey, do you really want to be a part of this before you collaborate? You want to ask yourself and you want to ask who you're working with and get an honest answer. A lot of times we're not invited into space and we need to be okay with that because maybe there's other reasons outside of our own selves where it's not okay to make art or collaborate in that way. And maybe it is that you'll find an even more deeper way to collaborate, or maybe later on in time you can collaborate, or maybe that's not what you need, but you have to ask. You just can't assume. You just can't assume that a community needs something and then you just hop in and fix it like a superhero. You have to ask. Did you have a tip? Did you have a tip?
Well, I thought it was very valuable for you to bring up issues of what people might feel are exclusion. Because especially with our audience of teens, Oftentimes, that's a big issue with young people, feeling like they're not part of the group, feeling excluded from the group,
Yes.
a lot of depression and anxiety about not feeling included. And there are a couple of things that I want to say. First, yes, I acknowledge that it feels terrible to want to be a part of something and people don't want you to be a part of it. And the second thing I want to say is sometimes it gives you the energy to create your own space.
Yes.
So, sure, they wouldn't include you here. Maybe it's time for you to create your own collaboration. And then that way you can be more inclusive than the group that excluded you.
Yes.
Mhm.
And another tip that I wanted to suggest is to listen to the people that you're working with.
Mm.
You might say, hey, I want this to be a violet purple on the painting, and you're painting with your best friend who you love,
Mhm.
and they keep picking up the lavender paint. How do you get through that? How can you be flexible? How can you listen to the person to see maybe there's validity in why it is they've moved away from violet? Maybe there's validity in what it is they're saying in their process. And collaborating with art, and especially with mixed media, is so important to really listen and to move in tandem about the listening.
Mhm. Yes, definitely.
What else? Do you have another tip?
I think as a final tip before we get to our fantastic collage, a final tip is that collaboration is integral to a whole, healthy, and safe community. I know that we've been raised in the US, many of us, and there's a term called rugged individualism, right? We spend a lot of time, uh, looking at art that's about superheroes. But even the Avengers eventually had to collaborate. They had to become the Avengers, right? Um, there's a poem by Maya Angelou where she says, nobody but nobody can make it out here alone. So I know that some of us have been hurt through collaboration and through groups. So as a response, we say, I don't need anyone. I'm good by myself. I'm just a natural introvert. But even introverts can find other introverts and collaborate. Um, is your art going to reach its highest point without collaboration? Probably not. You have to buy your materials from somewhere, don't you? You have to market it somewhere. You have to put it up somewhere. Even if you are working alone in your studio and you just put things up on Instagram, Instagram is a collaboration because it is an outside platform owned and operated by someone other than yourself. So collaboration is integral. We can't get away from it. And we just have to figure out our own terms for ourselves that the ways in which collaboration works best for us. Mhm.
And so I know we've used up a lot of time.
Yes.
I want to share a few books that in my young adult and teen years really inspired me. And then I will show you my collage, and I will give instructions for you to try some art making at home. Okay? So, Art Spiegelman. I don't know anyone who is into graphic novels, but this is a good one. And it's great because graphic novels give us new ways of mark making in our artwork. Okay. And so there's a series of these. There's a series of these. So for folks who are into um, graphic novels, yes. Here is one that I thought was very important. Enough is enough. How to organize a successful campaign for change. A lot of times we find that the art is the campaign. And so just by making the art, you can create change around you. For instance, every time Treasure or I wear one of our shirts, someone is being educated about social justice history. Fannie Lou Hamer did so much with SNCC, with all these different organizations in Mississippi. And Ella Baker was one of the people who has always been into cooperative economics. And so it's a way to engage with others, but also the art tells it all. The art tells it all. So you're organizing every time you're making art because somebody's looking at this. What messages are you speaking in your art? Because that is the biggest gift that you have for yourself. That is your main communicator when you're not in the room. How are people reading your art and what can they learn from it? Another book that changed my life as a young person was Coming of Age in Mississippi. Do you want to take a second to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I love this genre of the U.S. novel. It's very signature to the U.S. and it's called memoir, memoir, memoir. So a lot of people think that memoir and autobiography are very similar, and they are very similar. But the difference between memoir and autobiography is autobiography kind of starts at the beginning and ends at the end. It tries to give this kind of full account of a life, whereas memoir is like a series of connected snapshots. In memoir, the person takes those moments that they feel shapes them the most, or that they feel are representative and explain how they kind of became who they are. And they pull those snapshots, those moments together into a memoir. Another incredible one is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. But Anne Moody's memoir, Coming of Age in Mississippi, is fantastic.
Yes. And then one last book for those of us who are in Missouri, Extraordinary Black Missourians. Earlier, I said there's usually someone who has done something similar or has tried to pave the way for ideas that we have now. And having this book kind of gives us an idea of all the great people who are from this area. So I definitely suggest this book as a social justice learning tool because we find most of our social justice issues in history. You know, so the more we know about history, the more it makes sense for us, the more it makes context for us. And this is a collage that I did. I used paint. Thank you. I used paint. I used wallpaper. I used a different type of paint. I used other magazine types. What I want you to do is to find a few magazines around you in newspaper clippings. And I want you to make something that represents the place that you're at. It could be the place in your mind. It could be the place, in this case, this piece is about St. Louis. So then you could tell because there's an STL hat, there is, there's a small map that says the Mississippi River. Those are indicators of place. I really think that it's important if we're thinking about collaboration and social justice to understand and have a creative vision about the place. So when you're making your collage, it doesn't have to look like a place. It could be a representation of the place. It could be abstract, but try to use 3 or more materials. 3 easy materials would be construction paper, magazine and newspaper clippings, and a drawing utensil, a pencil or a pen, drawing markers, or either crayons or anything else elaborate, such as paint. Everyone doesn't always have access to paint. I'm a professional artist, and sometimes I'm not having access to paint. And I got to think outside of the box. And sometimes I'm even sculpting because I want to be out of the box. And if I was thinking about making a mixed media piece that was about social justice issues, I would look around me for things that people have casted away as invaluable or things. Yes, yes, because it gives us an idea of what's going on in the world around us. And I would create something in that way. And I would piece together 2 or more materials. Maybe I would have to use twine or rope, or maybe one thing I love to do is I love to place the installation and then photograph and document it and allow the print of the photograph to be the art. So there's layers to mixed media art that we can explore with this. So that's the challenge. Get out in the world, find a couple of materials, just like in your collaborations, and see how they work together on canvas or on the ground or in space, and make it about place, make it about where you're at right now, and enjoy.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to our next workshop. Mhm.